Sarah Martinez clutched her 3 children's hands as they approached the imposing glass doors of First National Bank on a crisp Tuesday morning in downtown Denver. 8-year-old Emma walked between her twin brothers, 5-year-old Jake and Josh, their school backpacks bouncing with each step. Sarah had dressed carefully that morning, choosing her best blazer, though it showed signs of wear at the cuffs and the modest heels she reserved for important occasions. She rehearsed her presentation dozens of times in the mirror, perfecting every word, every gesture that might convince the loan officer to give her a chance. The automatic doors swooshed open, and the cool, marble-scented air of the bank lobby enveloped them. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs as she approached the reception desk, where a young woman with perfectly manicured nails and an expression that suggested she'd rather be anywhere else glanced up with barely concealed irritation. "I have an appointment with Mr. Davidson at 10:30, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the butterflies performing acrobatics in her stomach. "Sarah Martinez." The receptionist's eyes swept over Sarah's modest attire, then landed on the 3 children clustered around her legs like baby ducklings seeking shelter. Her lip curled almost imperceptibly. "Right? He's running late. You'll have to wait." She gestured dismissively toward a row of uncomfortable-looking chairs. "And maybe next time, consider childcare arrangements. This is a professional establishment." Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks but nodded politely, guiding her children to the seating area. The twins immediately began whispering to each other in that secret language siblings sometimes develop, while Emma pulled out a worn paperback book from her backpack. Sarah smoothed her skirt and tried to calm her racing thoughts, reviewing once more the business plans she'd spent months perfecting. 45 minutes passed. Other clients came and went, each one seemingly more important than a single mother with 3 children in tow. Sarah watched as a man in an expensive suit was immediately ushered into an office, despite arriving 20 minutes after her scheduled appointment time. She checked her phone anxiously, knowing she'd need to collect the children from school later, and had already arranged for her neighbor to watch them during this meeting. Finally, a tall man with silver hair and a perpetually stern expression emerged from a corner office. His eyes found Sarah immediately, and she could practically see his assessment: single mother, modest clothes, 3 young children. His professional smile never reached his eyes. "Mrs. Martinez, Gerald Davidson. Please, come in." His tone was cordial but cold, like a doctor delivering bad news with practiced efficiency. Sarah gathered her children and followed him into his office, where the walls were lined with awards, photographs of Davidson with local politicians, and diplomas from prestigious universities. He gestured to chairs across from his massive oak desk, but there were only 2 seats available. Sarah quickly seated Jake and Josh together in one chair while Emma perched on the arm, and Sarah took the remaining seat. "So," Davidson said, settling behind his desk like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict, "you're looking for a business loan." He opened her file with theatrical slowness, his eyebrows rising as he scanned the documents. "A catering company. Quaint." Sarah leaned forward, her carefully prepared pitch ready to spring forth. "Yes, sir. I've been running a small catering operation from my home for the past 2 years. I specialize in authentic Mexican cuisine and fusion dishes. My client base has grown significantly, and I need capital to lease a commercial kitchen space and purchase professional equipment. I've brought detailed financial projections, customer testimonials, and—" "Mrs. Martinez," Davidson interrupted, not looking up from her file. "I'll be frank with you. Single mothers aren't exactly our target demographic for business loans. The failure rate is astronomical. Most women in your situation lack the business acumen necessary to manage both a company and their domestic responsibilities. He glanced meaningfully at her children. The words hit Sarah like physical blows. She felt Emma stiffen beside her, understanding enough of the conversation to recognize the dismissive tone. The twins, mercifully, were distracted by a small toy car Josh had smuggled in his pocket. "Mr. Davidson, if you'd look at my track record, you'll see that I've successfully managed my finances for the past 3 years since my husband's passing. I've built my current client base through word of mouth alone, and my profit margins are actually quite impressive for a startup operation. I'm not asking for charity, I'm presenting a viable business opportunity." Davidson's smile was patronizing. "Mrs. Martinez, I appreciate your enthusiasm. But the reality is that restaurants and catering businesses have an 80% failure rate in the first year. Add to that the challenges of single parenthood, and frankly, I'd be doing you a disservice by approving this loan. You'd lose your house, your children would suffer, and the bank would have another default on our books." Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she reached into her briefcase. "Sir, I've brought letters of intent from several major clients, including the Denver Convention Center and 3 hotel chains. These contracts alone would generate enough revenue to service the loan comfortably." But Davidson had already closed her file. "I'm sorry, but I cannot in good conscience approve this application. Perhaps you should consider a smaller venture. Something more manageable. Maybe a home-based baking business. Nothing too ambitious." He stood, clearly indicating the meeting was over. Sarah felt as though the air had been sucked from the room. 3 months of preparation, countless hours spent on business plans and financial projections, all dismissed in 15 minutes. She gathered her materials with as much dignity as she could muster, her children sensing the shift in atmosphere and clustering closer to her. "Children," Davidson said in a voice one might use to address pets, "your mother is a very determined woman. But sometimes adults have to make realistic decisions. Perhaps when you're older, you'll understand." Emma looked up at him with eyes far too wise for her 8 years. "My mom makes the best food in the whole world. You're making a mistake." Davidson chuckled condescendingly. "I'm sure she does, sweetheart. I'm sure she does." As they walked toward the exit, Sarah could feel the eyes of every bank employee on them. The receptionist didn't bother to look up as they passed, but Sarah caught her mouthing something to a colleague that looked suspiciously like welfare case. The security guard, a heavy-set man with kind eyes, was the only person who offered them any courtesy, holding the door open and giving Sarah an encouraging nod. "Have a good day, ma'am. Beautiful children you have there." Once outside, Sarah knelt on the sidewalk, gathering her children into a fierce hug. She wouldn't cry in front of them. She wouldn't let them see how deeply the rejection cut, how it felt like every stereotype about single mothers had been weaponized against her dreams. "Mama, are you okay?" Emma asked, her small hand stroking Sarah's hair. "I'm fine, Mija. Just fine. Sometimes grown-ups have different opinions about things, that's all." But as they walked home, Sarah's mind was already working. She had something that Mr. Davidson didn't know about, something she'd never mentioned in her loan application because she'd wanted to succeed on her own merits. Something that would make his condescending smirk disappear forever. That evening, after the children were in bed, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with her laptop and a cup of coffee that had long since grown cold. She scrolled through documents she hadn't looked at in months, bank statements from accounts she rarely touched, investment portfolios that had been growing quietly for the past decade. Her late husband Miguel had been many things: a loving father, a devoted partner, and unbeknownst to most people, a brilliant tech entrepreneur who had sold his software company for a considerable sum just 2 years before his sudden heart attack. Sarah had tucked that money away, determined to raise her children on her own earnings, to prove to herself and the world that she didn't need anyone's help. The insurance money and Miguel's company sale had been invested conservatively, growing steadily while she worked to build her catering business from the ground up. She wanted to earn her success, not inherit it. But Mr. Davidson had made this personal. The next morning, Sarah made a phone call to Harrison and Associates, the most prestigious commercial real estate firm in Denver. She had an appointment within the hour. "Mrs. Martinez," said Patricia Harrison, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who had built her reputation on closing impossible deals. "I understand you're interested in purchasing commercial property." Sarah had changed her approach entirely. Instead of her worn blazer, she wore an elegant black dress that had been hanging in her closet since Miguel's funeral. Her hair was professionally styled, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she wanted. "Yes. I'm specifically interested in the building at 425 Market Street. I believe it houses First National Bank's downtown branch." Patricia's eyebrows rose. "That's a significant investment, Mrs. Martinez. The building is worth approximately $12 million. Are you looking at this as part of a larger development group?" Sarah opened her briefcase and withdrew a portfolio that Patricia recognized immediately, the kind prepared by major investment firms for high-net-worth clients. "No, I'm looking to purchase it personally. I can provide proof of liquid assets exceeding $15 million, if necessary." The conversation shifted dramatically. Patricia's professional demeanor became genuinely respectful as she realized she wasn't dealing with a dreamer, but with serious money. Within 2 hours, they had contacted the building's owners and initiated preliminary purchase negotiations. The building that housed First National Bank was owned by a real estate investment trust that had been looking to liquidate several downtown properties to fund a major development project in California. Sarah's offer of $13 million, with proof of funds and a willingness to close within 30 days, was exactly what they needed. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in the same marble lobby where she'd been humiliated, but this time she wasn't alone. She was accompanied by Patricia Harrison, 2 lawyers from Denver's most prominent commercial law firm, and a representative from the building management company. The receptionist who had dismissed her looked up with the same bored expression, then did a double take as she recognized Sarah. "I'd like to speak with Mr. Davidson, please," Sarah said pleasantly. "Tell him Mrs. Martinez is here to see him." The receptionist's confusion was palpable. "Do you have an appointment?" "Oh, I don't think I'll need one." Within minutes, Davidson emerged from his office, clearly irritated at being disturbed. When he saw Sarah, his expression cycled through confusion, annoyance, and then something approaching concern as he noticed her entourage of expensive suits. "Mrs. Martinez, I'm not sure why you're here, but as I explained before, your loan application was..." "Actually, Mr. Davidson," Patricia Harrison interrupted smoothly, "we're not here about a loan. We're here to discuss the future of your lease agreement. Mrs. Martinez is the new owner of this building." The silence that followed was profound. Davidson's face went through several color changes, settling on an unpleasant shade of gray. Other bank employees had begun to gather, sensing drama but not understanding its source. "I'm sorry, what?" Davidson managed. Sarah stepped forward, and this time her voice carried the authority of ownership. "Mr. Davidson, 3 weeks ago you told me that I lacked the business acumen to manage a simple catering operation. You suggested that single mothers like me should stick to manageable ventures. You dismissed my business plan without serious consideration and made assumptions about my capabilities based solely on my appearance and family situation. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle in the suddenly quiet lobby. You were wrong on several counts. First, you assumed that because I didn't mention my late husband's business success, I must have no financial resources. Second, you assumed that because I chose to build my business slowly and carefully, I lacked ambition or capability. And third, you assumed that your opinion of me mattered more than the numbers in my business plan. Davidson's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Mrs. Martinez, if there was a misunderstanding. Oh, there was no misunderstanding, Mr. Davidson. You were quite clear in your assessment. Sarah turned to address the growing crowd of bank employees. I want everyone here to understand something important. 3 weeks ago, I came to your bank as a customer seeking a business loan. I was treated with condescension and dismissed without fair consideration. Today, I'm here as your landlord. She turned back to Davidson, whose face had now progressed to a mottled red. Your lease agreement is up for renewal in 6 months. I'll be reviewing all tenant arrangements in this building. I trust that First National Bank will be more receptive to working with local entrepreneurs in the future. The lawyer beside Sarah stepped forward with a folder. These are the building ownership transfer documents, filed this morning with the city. Mrs. Martinez now has complete authority over all leasing decisions for this property. Davidson's hands shook slightly as he took the documents. Mrs. Martinez, surely we can discuss this professionally. If your loan application needs to be reconsidered. Sarah's laugh was not unkind, but it was definitely not warm. Mr. Davidson, I no longer need your loan. My catering company secured private funding and opened its commercial kitchen last week. We're already serving 3 major hotel chains and have a contract with the convention center. Funny how quickly things can change when you're dealing with people who judge businesses on their merits rather than their preconceptions. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Mr. Davidson, the security guard who was kind to my children and me during our last visit. His name is Robert Hendricks. I'll be recommending him for a position with the new property management company. It's remarkable how much you can learn about a place by observing how its employees treat people they think don't matter. As Sarah walked toward the exit, the bank fell silent except for the clicking of her heels on the marble floor. The receptionist, who had been listening with growing horror, suddenly found her computer screen fascinating. Other employees stepped aside, creating a path that felt distinctly like a respectful corridor. Just before reaching the door, Sarah turned one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to be clear about something. I didn't purchase this building out of spite or revenge. I bought it because it represents exactly the kind of solid investment opportunity that Mr. Davidson claimed I couldn't understand. The building has excellent rental income potential, a prime downtown location, and room for significant appreciation. In other words, it was a smart business decision. She smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. The fact that it also allows me to ensure this bank treats all potential customers with respect regardless of their appearance or family situation. Well, that's just a bonus. As the doors closed behind her, Sarah could hear the eruption of whispered conversations beginning in the lobby. Patricia Harrison caught up with her on the sidewalk, grinning like a proud mentor. Mrs. Martinez, in 30 years of commercial real estate, I have never seen anything quite like that. How does it feel? Sarah looked up at the building that now bore her name on the ownership documents. then down at her phone where she had 17 new catering orders waiting to be confirmed. It feels like justice, Patricia. It feels like justice. 6 months later, First National Bank's lease renewal came up for review. By then, Sarah's catering company, Coraz and Kitchen, had become one of Denver's most sought-after catering services, with a waiting list for weddings and corporate events. She had hired 12 employees, including 3 other single mothers who had been turned down for business loans by various banks around the city. Mr. Davidson had submitted a lease renewal application with a letter of apology and assurances that the bank would be implementing new customer service training. Sarah approved the renewal, but not before requiring that the bank establish a microloan program specifically designed to help local entrepreneurs who might not meet traditional lending criteria.